In the heart of West Africa, a storm was brewing. Burkina Faso, a proud nation with a rich history, was in deep trouble. Terrorist attacks had destroyed villages. Thousands of people had been forced to leave their homes. Schools and hospitals were shut down. The government was weak, and the people had lost hope. Then, in September 2022, something unexpected happened. A young soldier named Ibrahim Traoré, just 34 years old, stepped forward. He was not a rich politician. He was not part of the old system. He was a captain in the army, calm, strong, and deeply loyal to his country. When he and his fellow soldiers removed the man who had taken power only months before, many people in Burkina Faso didn't feel fear. They felt relief. They felt that maybe, just maybe, someone was finally standing up for them. Traoré was different from the leaders they had known before. He didn't speak like a man chasing power. He spoke like a man who understood the pain of his people. In his first speech, he said the truth. The country was in an emergency. The people were suffering. And something had to change, fast. He talked about the problems clearly: terrorism, broken healthcare, poor roads, lack of clean water, and failing schools. But he also spoke with hope. He said Burkina Faso would rise again. And he promised to lead with honesty, courage, and care. The people listened. They watched. And slowly, their hearts began to believe. What amazed everyone was how Traoré lived. He did not take the big salary of a president. Instead, he kept his army captain's pay. He even canceled the huge salary increase his predecessor had given to government officials. Leaders should serve the people, he said, not themselves. On social media, in crowded markets, in schools and homes, the people began to say his name with pride. Traoré. He was young. He was brave. And he seemed to truly care. Even beyond Burkina Faso's borders, people noticed. Young Africans, tired of corrupt leaders, saw Traoré as a symbol of new hope. At a big ceremony in Ghana, where many African presidents gathered, it was Traoré who received the loudest applause. The crowd stood for him, not because he was famous, but because he stood for something bigger: change. The road ahead was not going to be easy. The problems were still there, and danger still hung in the air. But for the first time in a long while, the people of Burkina Faso felt like they had a leader who was walking with them, not above them. And in the middle of that storm, a young flame had started to burn, bright, steady, and full of promise. When Captain Ibrahim Traoré took power, many wondered what kind of leader he would be. Would he act like the others before him, enjoying power, riches, and comfort while the people struggled? Or would he be different? It didn't take long for the people of Burkina Faso to see the truth. From the very beginning, Traoré chose to live like an ordinary citizen. He kept his simple military pay instead of taking the high salary offered to presidents. He didn't move into a fancy palace or surround himself with luxury. Instead, he stayed close to his soldiers, close to the people, and close to the problems they all faced together. Even more shocking to many was one of his first big decisions. He canceled a law passed by the previous government that had increased the salaries of top officials. Why should leaders earn more when the people have nothing? He asked. That question touched the hearts of millions. It was the kind of thinking the people had long hoped for, but rarely heard from their leaders. In markets and neighborhoods, people began to speak of Traoré with respect. He is one of us, they said. He understands us. For the first time in years, they felt their leader was not above them, but beside them, sharing their struggles, listening to their voices, and making choices for their good. He visited villages, met with farmers, and listened to mothers whose children could no longer go to school because of terrorist threats. He spoke to young people, encouraging them not to lose hope, but to dream of a stronger, prouder Burkina Faso. On social media, his photos spread fast. Not in suits and ties, but in his military uniform, working on the ground. People shared stories of how he greeted them with kindness and humility, how he respected elders and inspired the youth. He was not performing for cameras. He was leading with heart. Even critics had to admit, this young captain was no ordinary president. But what truly made Traoré different was not just his humble lifestyle. It was his deep belief in fairness. He wanted every Burkinabe, rich or poor, young or old, from city or village, to feel they mattered. He said, We must build a country where justice is real, not just a word. To many, that dream had once seemed impossible. But under Traoré, hope began to grow again, like green shoots after a long dry season. As the weeks passed, his popularity soared, not because he gave speeches, but because he took action. He walked the talk. He had become more than a leader. He had become a symbol of change, of integrity, and of a new future rising from the struggles of the past. Burkina Faso, once buried in despair, was starting to believe again. And leading that belief was a young man in uniform, the people's president. Burkina Faso is a land rich in gold. For many years, that gold was taken by foreign companies. Big trucks carried it away. Planes flew it out. But the people who lived near the mines, who saw the gold taken from their soil, stayed poor. Their roads were broken. Their children walked miles to school. Their villages had no clean water. President Ibrahim Traoré saw this and said, "Enough." He believed the wealth of Burkina Faso should not fill the pockets of outsiders. It should help the people of Burkina Faso live better lives. And so, he made a bold decision. He nationalized 2 big gold mines. This meant that the country, not foreign companies, would now own and control these mines. Some people were shocked. Others were afraid. But many cheered. For the first time, the people felt that the gold under their feet was truly theirs. Traoré didn't stop there. He also ended the export of unrefined gold to Europe. For years, Burkina Faso sent out raw gold, and other countries made money by refining it. Traoré asked, "Why can't we do this ourselves?" Soon after, he opened Burkina Faso's first national gold refinery. This new facility could process 150 tons of gold every year. It was a huge step toward independence. It also created jobs for local workers and gave young people hope for the future. "We must stop being the country that gives away its riches," Traoré said. "We must be a country that builds with them." The people listened and nodded. They had seen leaders talk before, but now they were seeing real action. In mining towns, families started to dream of clinics, schools, and better roads, all paid for by their own resources. Traoré also made sure that rules were followed. He sent teams to check on mining operations and make sure the environment was protected. He reminded everyone, the land belongs to the people, and it must be respected. His message was clear. Burkina Faso's gold would no longer be a curse. It would be a blessing. The world began to take notice. News of the young president who stood up for his country's wealth spread across Africa and beyond. Young people from other countries looked up to him. They shared his videos, his speeches, and called him a true African patriot. To his people, Traoré was more than a president. He was a guardian of the land, a protector of their future, and a leader who gave them pride. Burkina Faso still had challenges, but now it also had direction. Its gold was staying home. Its people were rising. And at the center of it all was a young leader who had turned the nation's wealth into the nation's hope. While gold shone bright in the ground, President Ibrahim Traoré knew that the true strength of Burkina Faso lay not just in its mines, but in its people, especially the farmers. Across the country, thousands of families depended on farming to survive. They worked under the hot sun, growing food and cotton, but their hard work rarely brought enough money. Middlemen took most of the profit. Foreign companies bought their cotton cheap and sold it high. Traoré wanted to change that. He believed Burkina Faso could rise by standing on its own 2 feet. So he started focusing on agriculture, the heartbeat of the nation. His message was simple. We must feed ourselves. We must process what we grow. And we must depend on no one. One of his proudest achievements was the creation of the National Support Center for Artisanal Cotton Processing. This was more than just a building. It was a dream turned real, a place where local workers, especially women and youth, could turn raw cotton into finished products like clothes, blankets, and fabrics. For the first time, Burkina Faso was not just growing cotton, but also adding value to it. Women in villages who once earned little from farming now had sewing machines and training. They worked together, laughed together, and built something powerful. "We are not just farmers anymore," one woman said. "We are creators. We are businesswomen." The president also invested in new farming tools, irrigation systems, and seeds that could grow even in dry weather. He met with farmers personally, listening to their struggles and their ideas. He promised to support them, not just with words, but with real help. In dry areas, Traoré launched special projects to bring water to the fields. Tractors arrived in places where none had ever been. Young men and women who once dreamed of leaving the country for jobs abroad now stayed home to work the land, because now they saw farming as a future, not a failure. Traoré often said, "We cannot be truly free if we depend on others to feed us." That message hit deep. Burkina Faso, a land long known for struggle, was now planting seeds of strength. In markets across the country, "Made in Burkina Faso," signs began to appear on bags, clothes, and cotton products. People smiled with pride. They were buying their own goods, wearing their own designs, and growing their own food. For the people, this was not just farming, it was freedom. And for Traoré, it was just the beginning. He saw a future where Burkina Faso would not only survive but thrive, from the gold underground to the green fields above. Step by step, the land was changing. The people were rising. And at the center was a leader who believed in the soil, the seeds, and the soul of his nation. Even with gold in the ground and crops in the fields, one dark cloud still hung over Burkina Faso: terrorism. For years, armed groups had attacked towns and villages. They burned homes, closed schools, and forced families to flee. Nearly 2 million people were displaced. Many children had not seen a classroom in years. Fear had become part of daily life. But President Ibrahim Traoré was not afraid. He knew that without security, there could be no peace, no growth, and no future. He called this battle the fight for our survival. He stood up and spoke with strong words. "We will not run. We will not hide. We will defend our people and take back every inch of our land." Under Traoré's leadership, the army began to change. He provided better equipment, training, and support to soldiers. He gave power to local defense volunteers, brave citizens who stood up to protect their communities. These were farmers, teachers, and shopkeepers who picked up arms to defend their families and their neighbors. And Traoré stood with them, shoulder to shoulder. He did not lead from a distance. He visited military camps, spoke directly to the troops, and often wore his uniform, reminding everyone that he was not just a president, but a soldier too. He listened to the stories of young fighters, thanked mothers who had lost sons, and promised to make their sacrifices count. One soldier said, "When Traoré visits us, we feel proud. We feel seen. He gives us courage." The fight was not easy. The enemy was hidden and cruel. But slowly, hope returned. Bit by bit, the army and the volunteers began regaining lost territory. In areas once controlled by terror, schools reopened and markets returned. The sound of gunfire was replaced by the laughter of children. But Traoré knew that weapons alone were not enough. He also launched efforts to bring back life to affected areas, rebuilding roads, schools, and health clinics. He asked for no foreign troops. Instead, he told the world, "We will protect ourselves. We will build our own strength." Many people in Burkina Faso felt proud of this. For too long, they had depended on help from other nations. Now, they stood on their own, not with fear, but with unity. He also reached out to Mali and Niger, forming a strong alliance called the Alliance of Sahel States. Together, they promised to defend their people, protect their lands, and support one another. Across the country, a new feeling was rising: courage. The people no longer bowed their heads in fear. They stood tall, ready to rebuild. And behind them, leading them, was the same young man who had once marched as a soldier, now marching as a symbol of strength, safety, and unshaken resolve. Ibrahim Traoré had become the shield of his people. Across Africa, many leaders rise to power with big promises. But too often, those promises fade. Palaces grow larger, officials grow richer, and the people grow tired. But in Burkina Faso, something different was happening. Under Ibrahim Traoré, the people saw not just another president. They saw a new kind of leader. Traoré did not ask for praise. He asked for work. He did not demand loyalty. He inspired it. His leadership style was simple but powerful. Serve first, lead second. He walked through villages without bodyguards surrounding him like a wall. He met with students, farmers, and soldiers alike, always listening, always learning. When people spoke to him, he didn't just nod. He answered with care and took action. One young boy in a small town said, "He listens like my father. He talks like my brother." What set Traoré apart was not just his bravery or his reforms. It was his honesty. In a world where many leaders hid behind lies, he spoke the truth, even when it was hard to hear. When Burkina Faso withdrew from ECOWAS, many were surprised. But Traoré explained clearly, "We must walk our own path. We cannot borrow development. We must build it ourselves." He refused loans from the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. Some said it was risky. But to Traoré, freedom from foreign control was worth more than borrowed money. He wanted Burkina Faso to rise on its own, to show the world what a proud, united nation could do without strings attached. In meetings with other African presidents, Traoré stood tall. Even when surrounded by older leaders, he was not afraid. He spoke with confidence, not arrogance. When he attended President John Mahama's inauguration in Ghana, the crowd erupted in applause when his name was announced. It was the loudest cheer of the day. People from across Africa, especially the youth, looked to him with admiration. They saw someone like them. Someone young, strong, and unafraid. Someone who believed Africa didn't need saving. It needed leaders who cared. But Traoré did not let the praise go to his head. He remained focused. He often reminded his team, "We are servants of the people. Our duty is to leave this country better than we found it." And that was the heart of his leadership. A humble mission, a deep love for his country, and a promise to never betray the trust of the people. In a world full of broken dreams, Traoré became a builder of new ones, not with loud speeches, but with quiet strength, not with golden crowns, but with dusty boots. Burkina Faso had found something rare, a leader not looking down from a throne, but lifting others up from the ground. And in him, the people saw the future, clearer, brighter, and finally within reach. Burkina Faso was changing. The wind of hope blew across cities, towns, and villages. Markets were fuller, roads were being rebuilt, and children were returning to school. But President Ibrahim Traoré knew that real change must go deeper. He believed a strong country needed more than new buildings. It needed strong institutions, fair leadership, and a united people. One of his first goals was to fix the way government worked. For many years, corruption had quietly eaten away at the system. Money meant for schools and hospitals had often disappeared. Projects were promised but never completed. The people were tired of hearing empty words. But Traoré was different. He cut the salaries of high-ranking officials, including his own. While others took advantage of their position, he continued to live on his army captain's pay. His message was clear. The government must serve, not steal. This bold move shocked many, but it won the hearts of the people. They saw their leader leading by example. They began to believe again, not in a perfect government, but in one that tried to do right. To make government more honest and effective, Traoré began to empower local leaders. He knew that mayors and community heads understood their people's needs better than faraway officials. He gave them tools, training, and funds, but also rules. Money had to be tracked. Results had to be shown. Waste and theft would not be allowed. In small towns, roads were repaired, water pumps installed, and local health clinics reopened. The people saw the difference, and they felt proud. "Our voices are finally being heard," said one village elder. At the same time, Traoré continued to push for education and healthcare. Schools that had closed because of violence were slowly reopening. Teachers returned. Books were delivered. In refugee camps, children once without hope began learning again. Hospitals and clinics were restocked with medicine and staff. Pregnant women no longer had to walk for miles for care. Sick children were treated faster. The people began to feel safe in their own country again. But Traoré knew all of this had to last. So he also began preparing for the future, not by rushing, but by laying a strong foundation. He spoke of a transition back to democracy, one built on order, peace, and national unity. He wanted a system where the people's voice mattered, and where leaders were chosen with truth and trust. Still, many remembered past promises that were broken by others. But Traoré's actions gave them a reason to believe. He was not clinging to power. He was shaping a path. Step by step, brick by brick, Ibrahim Traoré was building a new kind of nation. Not with the help of outsiders, but with the hearts and hands of Burkina Faso themselves. It was no longer just a dream. It was becoming a living reality. As the sun rose over the land of Burkina Faso, its golden light touched fields, villages, and cities with warmth and new hope. From the dusty roads of the countryside to the busy streets of Ouagadougou, the people felt something powerful in the air, a future that belonged to them. And behind that feeling stood one man, Ibrahim Traoré. He was no longer just a young captain in uniform. He had become a symbol of courage, of pride, and of what was possible when a leader truly served his people. In the beginning, many had doubted him. He was only 34 when he took power, younger than most world leaders. But in just a few years, he had proven that age does not decide wisdom. He had shown that bravery was not just on the battlefield, but also in making tough decisions that put the people first. His work touched every part of the country. Gold mines once owned by foreigners were now helping to build schools and hospitals. Cotton grown by farmers was now processed in Burkina Faso, not sent away to other lands. A new airport, a national gold refinery, and investments in agriculture showed the world that Burkina Faso was rising, on its own terms. But perhaps his greatest achievement was giving the people back something they had lost: pride. They were no longer waiting for foreign aid or instructions from others. They were building their own future, strong, united, and free. Young people looked at Traoré and said, "If he can do it, so can we." He became a beacon for youth across Africa, proving that the continent didn't need old ideas from far away. It needed bold hearts and clean hands. Yet Ibrahim Traoré never asked to be worshipped. He reminded everyone, "This is not about me. It is about Burkina Faso." He believed leadership was a service, not a crown. As he looked toward the future, he stayed focused. The plan was clear: continue strengthening the nation, defeat terrorism completely, and return the country to democracy when the time was right. But this time, democracy would be built on strong foundations, not weak promises. And as that journey continued, the people stood beside him. In every village, his name was spoken with respect, not because he was perfect, but because he was real. The leader who walked with them, listened to them, and fought for them. In the history of Burkina Faso, there would be many names, but Ibrahim Traoré would stand among the greatest, not because of how he rose, but because of how he lifted others with him. He gave the people hope. He gave them voice. And he gave them the belief that Africa could lead itself. The story of Ibrahim Traoré was still being written, but already it echoed like a song across the land, a song of freedom, strength, and a young lion who chose to lead with heart.